She was a playboy, Bridget Bardot. She showed me things I didn't know. She did it right there, out on the deck. Put her canine teeth in the side of my neck. I'm in the hallway waiting for ya, mini skirt and my go-go boots. I just want you to make a move, so slow down, sit down, it's new. Hello and welcome to another episode of Saturday Night Shrinking. I am your host, Amora Sun, and today I'm lucky enough to be interviewing Camille van Putten, who plays the role of Bottom in our upcoming production of A Midsummer Night's Dream that opens tomorrow night. So, Camille, thank you very much for meeting with me today. I thought I'd just give you a bit of an opportunity to tell me about your history, herstory, theystory as an actor, and kind of what drew you into this production and some of your background as a performer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Maura. Yeah, I feel like performing a theater specifically is something that sort of like keeps on echoing through my life. It first called out to me when I was probably around like 3 or 4 years old, on a trip actually with my family to New York City. And I don't know if that was my first time seeing live theater or just my first time seeing live theater of that scale. But we went to see the Rockettes and I think like Beauty and the Beast. It was like on Broadway or something like that. It felt electric, and it felt like coming to life, or coming back to life, being in those audience seats and just seeing what's happening. And even as a little kid, I was concerned about how that feeling, that strong emotional response it prompted in me, if like that isn't a guarantee of that being something that plays a part in your future or it being something you're good at or anything like that. But I just felt so strongly being there in that moment that, I proclaimed sort of like casting a spell on yourself of like, I want to do that. I didn't know how, but there's just something about it. There's something about the way it made me feel that I knew from that young age I wanted in my life. And that's really the common thread, and I have bounced back and forth, abandoned acting is a strong term to use. I'm using it kind of glibly, a number of times, because I really feel like I'm in search of that feeling that it gave me. And there's like any job, there's so much about acting and around acting that isn't those exultant moments of connection or flow where you feel like your skill that you've accumulated matches the challenge of the moment without overwhelming you, and without being bored and understimulated. And also, I haven't really encountered anything else that sparks that feeling in the same way as acting, as performance, and as honing the skills for performance. And for that reason, I think that's why I keep on taking breaks and saying like, okay, I'm done with that. That was a child's dream. It's time to be more realistic. And then when that feeling is just absent from my life for a certain amount of time, I start to crave it again. And it's sort of like, what am I doing here? If not that, to a certain extent.
I have a friend, he's a Canadian artist based out of Calgary, and he wrote this book called Stop Making Art and Die. And his name is Rich Tayru. Shout out to Rich and Jess Tayru of Rumble House, Calgary. They're only doing it for a few more seasons now, and then they're going into a much-deserved retirement. But along the same lines, he's always advocating, it doesn't matter the scope, it doesn't matter the reach. What matters is connecting to your true authentic self through some kind of creative process or creative outlet or artistic vein so that your soul gets nourished and nurtured. And I think acting and performance art is some of the best way is to kind of bypass people's defenses, their reflexes, this guise and guile that people grasp on to protect themselves from pain a lot of the time. And of course, that's a very psychological thing to say, but that's the truth. And your description of, going to see the Rockaz and having like this earth-shattering moment of realization. I had a similar thing watching Phantom of the Opera when it came to Vancouver, BC. Also the West Coast. I know you're from California. And just the collaboration, the effort it takes for all these different human beings.
Yeah. You don't know exactly what's going on or how it's happening or what it took for it to happen, but you just know that something magical and monumental is happening on that stage.
Yes.
And you want to be part of it. You want to, in my case, at least, you want to touch that magic. You want to taste it somehow,
Sacrifices were made. Like people met for hours and hours at a time, like whether you're running lights or whether you're running sound, whether you're on the stage, whether you're producing or directing, it takes so much energy. Everybody has their unique roles. And it's almost like a bunch of, soldiers completing a mission. You have to listen to each other. You have to adapt, and kind of correct as a unit. And if a couple of you are getting left behind or maybe dealing with some stage fright or some anxiety, or maybe you aren't off book yet by a certain date. I laugh because me and another actor have been looking at our phones and scripts up until dress rehearsal, even though by comparison, I have maybe a fourth of the lines that you have or something like that.
But your lines are all in verse.
Yeah.
And that's hard, It's
true. I talk a lot of poetry and I describe environments.
Yeah. Freaking tough.
It's cool to be, for me, it's cool to be back in this world. Because Midsummer Night's Dream was the first Shakespeare play that I ever studied and I ever performed.
Incredible.
And I ever directed as, I think, a 14 or a 15-year-old in high school.
Oh, that's so cool.
I was obsessed with Shakespeare and I played the same roles. So it's like super surreal.
Yeah. It circles back. It echoes.
But, I was interviewing Alyssa Poon, who plays Puck, yesterday. And she was saying, oh, yeah, it's only been 10 years since I played Puck in high school. And I thought about, it's been 20 years for me. That's why I can't remember half the lines.
Oh, God. If only the memory stuck around that long.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
So what drew you to audition for the role of Bottom? And is Bottom like anything you've done before?
It was actually pretty, I don't know if providential is the right word. That has a little bit stronger religious connotations that I'm looking for. A week before, Janani reached out to me randomly over backstage, which for me at least, there's been other times where I've been like, oh, if only I had like a way to get back into it, then maybe I'd go back to acting, And literally a week before, I risked a moment of vulnerability that I hadn't really taken before, I don't think. And at a bar with some friends, I spoke frankly, more frankly than I think I ever really had. I spoke about my desire to return to theater, the fact that it felt like, continued to feel like the only thing that made sense, the only thing that really connected with my personality, where I felt like all the different parts of myself can be put to use and put to work rather than in other professional experiences in completely different domains where it always felt and feels like I kind of have to like shuffle off and section off different parts of myself to like procure the 25% of myself that's actually of use to this job. But everything else kind of needs to be pushed, shuffled off into the background, or kind of like a little kid, keep that other part of yourself like occupied in the corner with some Build-A-Blocks while you have to go take care of this adult shit. Yeah. And I've longed and craved that holistic, harmonious approach, that feeling that really am sort of in search of of those peak experiences, I guess, in some sort of way. Talking to these friends, non-actor, non-creative friends, which is also what made it feel vulnerable, but people who I liked and who I trusted. And I was like, I don't think based on past experience, they're going to like do a complete 180 and be incredibly invalidating or asshole-ish or, speaking confidently on something that they're completely ignorant about. And so I just expressed the contrasting longing and desire that I had for this thing, to go back to this thing, even though I was in the most competitive place in the United States to do that thing and hadn't done it for like 4 or 5 years at this point and hadn't even considered doing it until a few months previously, just privately. I had one person reach out to me from back in Seattle, where I moved to New York City from. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do the production they were talking about, mostly because it was still in Seattle and I wasn't there. And I didn't think that, and I also had misgivings about like this part. I don't think I'm right for this part that they're asking me to do. And I was afraid. I was afraid of falling on my face. I was afraid of people expecting a lot of me, asking me to do something that I knew was a stretch and not a sure thing for me. And my completely beefing it and sort of, for some reason in my mind, like proving the haters right or something, proving, even though I don't know what these other people's opinion of me was, still sort of like projecting onto them the opinions of past people who maybe saw me and evaluated me and saw that there was potential there, but she isn't, about my fears of perception, my fears of doing the role, aside from the logistics. And one of my friends, God bless her, her response was like, whoa, have they offered you this role? I was like, no, like they haven't. And she was like, okay, so then you're getting way ahead of yourself already, And because I trust this friend so much, and I know the way that she says things, and like I knew that that she meant exactly what she was saying on the face of it. Yes. And I trusted her to, like, rather than becoming defensive as I sometimes do, of like, yeah, well, I thought about that, but I still feel this way, or whatever. Instead being like, no, it's true. I don't have the answer. I still have all these other parts that I don't know how to reconcile. Yes, I'm afraid, and I'm afraid for a reason, but also don't let being afraid for a reason stop you from trying or going forward at all. And then literally like less than a week later, I got a random message from Johnny saying like, hey, I'm just casting the net wide, interested if you're interested in trying out for Shakespeare, which is where I feel most comfortable, especially like in a professional sense. And
So I met Janani last year, and so she reached out to me on Backstage, just like she did you.
Nice.
To audition for Lady Bracknell, because she was running The Importance of Being Earnest, the same theater in last October. And the great thing with Janani is, as a director, she's very much into all diversity, all ethnic groups, trying to equalize the playing field in terms of including more different faces and more different shades of humanity in theater, so that we can all kind of have a voice and work collaboratively, which is a really wonderful way to exist, because that also already kind of creates a bit of emotional safety, which a lot of actors thrive upon. Like I don't know about you, but I've worked in theater settings where it's been very one way or the highway, and very highly critical, and not a lot of collaboration, and not a lot of people willing to help each other out. So that's made things really nice for me anyway. What about Bottom? Do you feel like you can relate to?
Oh God, so much. So much. Really, I think it was also helped a lot with the conversations that I had with Janani, like pre-audition, between audition and like callback process. And the way that she framed it felt very in line with sort of what I was interested in exploring at that time, and what called out to me in the character for me, and how it relates to me right now in this life, my life. She put more of an emphasis, perhaps just coincidentally, on the fact that he is an aspiring artist, and he wants to create art, and he wants to he wants to move people, or he wants to be part of something bigger, you know, or all these things that just felt like a total